I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I will.
It's Sallypalooza. You can do anything you want.
I can ask a question. So a lot of our customers know that their funding model has to move to team-based funding. We know that. That's a given. You have fixed capacity.
Yeah.
But there's some conversation around on the front end, is it by product or is it by outcome? Should I fund outcomes that are cross-product or should I fund products? And I'm just curious if you guys have an opinion or a feeling around the difference. And if you don't have an opinion, that's okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we kind of backed into it a little bit. We had this idea that from an executive level, they're still going to want to fund outcomes. They think of them as initiatives or objectives or whatever. But from a planning and capacity perspective, we said you're still getting funded by your teams. So it's sort of we're trying to sort of bridge the gap between we want to have not a demand-oriented planning process, but a capacity-oriented planning process. And then, let us know what your objectives are, and we'll let you know how many of them we think we can get to based on what we know our capacity to be. And we're trying to fix it, like you said, right? So that it's not, well, can't we just have 20 more teams and then we can do everything on the list, right?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'd say you do both. So you're funding the captive capacity and you're holding them accountable through the governance process to provide good return. You're using outcomes to drive the prioritization of the more granular work, and then you're holding them accountable to produce returns from that investment stream, and then you're doing, adjustment of the allocations based on their performance. But you also need a mechanism for initiatives or outcomes that don't fit into that model simply because they cut across a bunch of things. And then, the hand of God comes down and says, we're going to take some of your capacity.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, if there is one.
I've got the question box over here.
The talking stick. So.
Oh, there we go.
Evan, you talked about the notion that an organization should be able to fund a good idea at any time. Can you talk about the relationship between the finance leaders and the business leaders and how you actually start to make that happen? Because I think in my experience, there's a little bit of the finance cops who are holding the purse strings and refusing to fund new things at all costs, and the business leaders saying, my God, this is so frustrating, I can't get good ideas funded. So can you talk a little bit about how you can change that dynamic between the finance and the business leaders?
I'll try. I'm not as smart about some of the diplomacy as the last group. I thought they had some great ideas. Obviously, finance historically is really used to saying that wasn't budgeted 16 months ago when we put the plan together, so there's no earthly way we could do it now. If that's just the entrenched mindset, we've got a lot of mindset shift that we have to work on. Anecdotally, I have a lot of these conversations with CFOs. And, CFOs hate the budgeting process too. They know it's inefficient. They know it doesn't work and they're frustrated. Whether or not they're open to entertaining the huge dislocation and investment in political capital to try something different typically is predictable based on how many quarterly bonuses until they pay off their beach house and retire. So you can kind of get a read pretty quick on how this conversation is going to go. But if you've got a fiery young CFO who's in there and wants to make a difference and do something creative, you can have some great conversations, and then they're not the department of no. I know that's not really what you're asking, but that's what came to mind.
People start,
Yeah.
I think maybe what we've learned is it goes back to, I forget who was talking about this earlier, about the what's in it for me, which is, can you get inside the head of the finance organization and figure out what is making their job harder? And what usually is making their job harder is Scope drift. They have no idea which program or project is delivering which capability. Oh, that's not over there anymore, that's over here. So they can't keep track of it. Their forecasts are usually off. And they rarely deliver against the capabilities, or the organization rarely delivers against the capabilities. So if there's a way you can turn the conversation and make it about, this is going to be easier for you to track assets. This is going to be easier for you to forecast the cost of doing business. It's going to be easier for you to actually track the scope of the actual work that's getting delivered. Maybe it can turn the conversation a little bit. But yeah, I mean,
One of the
having a
first
good
things-
partner matters.
Yeah, spot on. One of the first things that you give a Benny to the finance guys is when you do the new capitalization policy. A lot of organizations try to maximize software labor capitalization, and if you can go into the CFO and say, "Look, come on, dude, talk to me. You know, I know you hate IT and you hate IT consultants even more, but you know, if your current average capitalization rate is 60% of the costs of the project, I can show you how to make that 90." And it's like, oh, let's have lunch.
Okay, well, on that note, let's thank Jean and Evan and Roger and Ben for